YouTube, how's it going? Naker321 back again, and today what I've decided to do is make this video giving you some general tips on how to get into PC gaming and how to build a gaming PC. Because when I made my video a couple videos back showing off the new gaming PC I made, I got a lot of questions from you guys, so it seems like there's interest from you guys out there. And I have noticed kind of in the community in general there's a lot more interest in PC gaming with games like Battlefield 3 coming out and Skyrim. People are sort of putting their toes in the water, trying to feel out, see what it's like. But it can be kind of intimidating, the price for one, and sort of the terminology and maybe the parts that go into a computer. Some people are more comfortable in that than others. It can be a little intimidating, so hopefully I can alleviate some of those fears with this video. Just some general tips I have for you guys that you might want to consider if you want to get into PC gaming. And I'll first start by saying I am by no means a expert. There are people way more knowledgeable than I in the field, in computers in general and PC gaming, everything like that. But I feel like through making this build and doing the research myself, I'm kind of saving you guys time, because this, in the months really that it's been since I've done this, this whole process, starting to think about it and look up parts and pieces and things like that, I've learned a thing or two. So these are just some general tips I've found. They're not in-depth look at how a PC works or what parts and things like that. You can find better videos about that on YouTube for sure than here. So these are just some general tips I found that might help you guys along the way. So the first thing, and the most important thing in my opinion, more important than what parts you pick out, anything like that, is to do your research. And this encompasses a lot of different things. Not only just figuring out how to put the thing together, which is pretty important. You want to figure out how the parts work with each other, so you can get parts that are compatible with each other, all that. But the research really is going to help you pick out the best parts for what you want to do for it. Obviously, if you're watching this channel, you probably want to play games on it, so there are so many choices out there for motherboards and video cards and things like that. You're going to want to sort of pick out which one's right for you, and that not only means performance, but that also means price. So you want to find a good balance between the two, what you're willing to pay and how much performance you're willing to maybe sacrifice or gain or whatever. So you got to find that balance, and you got to look at all these motherboards have all these different features and different hard drives and like all the pieces that go into it. You want to really research what's best for you, and that's most important thing, is kind of figuring out what you want to do with this computer and sort of building it to your needs. And there's a lot of forums and places you can go that'll help you do that. But doing a lot of research and a lot of searching on sites for reviews and videos and things like that, getting a lot of different opinions is really going to help get a solid machine, in my opinion. So check those places. They have Newegg has great reviews on their site. Scroll through those and kind of read them one by one and just see what people have, any common complaints, or maybe if it's like one person who gives it a 1 out of 5 and 50 other people get a 5 out of 5, chances are it's probably a pretty good product. So I'd say look for common complaints, and then if a certain thing keeps popping up, a card fails on like 50% of the reviews, then maybe you might want to stay away from that. So doing research could save you money in the end there. You can go to Newegg's forums, which is egg, the letter expert, so egg expert. There's tons of helpful people on there. I've gone there, I still go there. Great forums, so I'd recommend going there. You can go to any other sites that sort of do reviews, like PC Gamer. It's a magazine, but they also have a website. I'm not sure if they have a forum, but they do reviews of different components and things like that. So just getting out there, and YouTube obviously is a great place to go as well. Newegg has a YouTube channel which I really like. They actually did a really in-depth 3-part video of how to build a PC, which I would definitely recommend to you guys. It goes from everything from choosing the parts to installing the parts to installing the operating system and the software afterwards, which is really helpful. I definitely used it, so I recommend that to you guys. So just go everywhere. The internet's your friend. Take in as much information as you can before you commit to buying these pieces, because the worst thing you want is to buy something and not be satisfied with it. So you want to definitely research beforehand and be happy with what you're getting yourself into, really. So, and price shopping as well if you're looking online. Newegg and Tiger Direct are the two sites that I guess I think they're probably the most prominent. There's probably other places you can get ones, but price match between those two. Sometimes the prices are about the same. Some it's only like a $10, $20 difference, but if you add that up in the end and you're saving, $10, $20 each on 5 or 6 parts, that could add up to about $100 savings, which you could spend towards games, obviously. So, or other parts, you know. I mean, it's you really benefit from shopping around, saving yourself money in the end. So that's my biggest piece of advice: is to do your research ahead of time before you dive into the actual build and ordering the parts and everything like that. You want to know what you're doing ahead of time. And that goes into my second tip, which is to plan ahead. Now this can either be before you buy the parts, preferably, or after you buy the parts. Have a kind of mental map in your mind of how these pieces are going to lay out in the case, like physically, and how you're going to sort of route the cables and things like that. And a lot of this stuff is going to be hard to sort of figure out until you have everything in it, but you can do a lot of pre-planning in your head. It's going to save you a lot of time later. Watch videos online of people physically building PCs and things like that to get an idea of the steps. You know, everybody does it a little bit differently, but you get a good general idea like that. So you definitely want to kind of know what you're doing before you go into it. Make sure you have a good workspace, a flat table, something non-conductive, particularly because static electricity can be harmful to some computer parts, so you want to be wary of that. Have a good space, probably well lighted would be nice. Preferably not on carpet, because that obviously can produce static electricity. If you don't have a choice, wear shoes while you're on the carpet. The other problem that carpet might have, if it's thick carpet, a lot of the screws and the pieces and things like that can be really small. So if you lose something like that in thick carpet, that could be a big problem. So just keep those kind of things in mind. Where you're actually putting the PC together could help. Some good things to have, obviously you need the basics like a screwdriver. Some people like to have a anti-static wrist strap, which is something you can buy from like Radio Shack for $5 to $10, something like that. It just discharges static electricity from your body, which helps. The other thing you can do, a lot of people do, is any of this exposed metal on the back of the case, just touch that before you start touching the pieces inside. That can help discharge electricity from your body. One thing that I found very, very helpful in cable management, that is getting cables out of the way of the airflow, because airflow, especially gaming, is very important to a PC. So you want to get as many cables out of the way. Most cases have spaces kind of in the back where you can tuck cables back there. You want to get as many cables as you can back there as possible. One thing I found helpful are these little just plastic flexible twist ties. I mean, you can find them anywhere. If you've ever bought anything in like a plastic blister, usually these are twisted on there and they hold whatever in place. More than likely you're going to get a ton of these when you buy your components for your PC. Don't throw them out. Keep them, because a lot of times the cases will come with zip ties, which are like plastic ties with a little sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but whatever. But once you tighten it, you can't loosen it. You know, that's the point. But a lot of times what I found is that your first sort of attempt at cable management might not be your best. You might want to rearrange stuff later. So having something like this, which is not a permanent solution, because with those zip ties, you have to cut them to get rid of them, and then you can't reuse it. So to have something like this, which is a little less permanent, and you can still get it, you know, tight, get it to do what you need to do. Having those available is a good option, which is actually what I use for most of my ties for the cables back there. So I think that's a helpful thing to have, and yeah, that's my tip for you guys. Don't throw out all this stuff you think's garbage in your boxes and stuff, because it could help you. So this kind of goes along with planning ahead, but consider the cost when you're kind of budgeting out your PC. You want to remember there's a lot of extra things that can add money to the build that you might not consider right away. A lot of times people just get the core components of the actual computer and spend their whole budget on that without realizing all the other stuff that can add a lot of money to the cost. And mostly that would be your operating software. Windows, for most people, is probably what you're going to use. And there are two options you can use. You can go with the standard sort of fully licensed Windows, which is what I did. There's three options. There's Home, I think Premium, something like that, and then Ultimate. For most cases, Home is probably good. That's the cheapest option, but for most users, that's probably going to be good for you. That's pretty expensive. I don't remember offhand what it is, but it's a couple $100, I think, and which is a little hard to stomach for some people. So what a lot of people like to do is they buy the OEM version, and I don't offhand remember what OEM means, but basically that is a version of Windows that is typically given to computer manufacturers like Dell or Best Buy. Even when they sell their pre-made computers, these are the versions of Windows that are installed in the system that they sell. It's cheaper, that's why people buy it, and that's why companies buy it. You know, they don't need a fully licensed version of it if they're just installing it once and throwing it out to the customer. But the issue with that is that it's only tied to that one motherboard. So let's say you fry your motherboard, or let's say you want to upgrade down the line, you need to buy another version of Windows if you use the OEM one. If you get the fully licensed version, you can swap that between computers and install it. I think however many times you want, really. So depending what your usage is, it might be a worthwhile investment, but it's really up to you. But that's definitely, I think, the one hidden cost a lot of people don't consider is Windows. And of course, you could download it. I don't recommend that, but some people like to do that, so you could do that way. The monitor is another cost that you might not consider. That can be, if you watch sales and things like that, it can be, and depending on how big of a monitor you want, anywhere between probably $100, $250, something like that. So just keep that in mind when you're planning out. Little things like a keyboard and a mouse if you don't have it, those usually aren't that expensive. A headset or speakers if you want to use that. I bought a headset for myself just because that's what I prefer. That can add costs. So-called gaming headsets can be more expensive than you'd expect. So factor those things in when you're considering your budget for your computer. And the last thing is, I would say, a lot of people tend to sort of build a computer and get everything running, wipe the sweat off their forehead that, miraculously everything actually runs and the computer didn't explode. And all they want to do is, once that desktop shows up, is just go online and just, start gaming or whatever. My advice would be, don't do that. First, you're going to want to get some antivirus software. Windows has a free one available, Microsoft Security Essentials you can use, or you can pay for other ones, or whatever you choose to use. You want to update Windows. Those annoying little Windows updates that pop up every once in a while. You're going to want to do that. There's a lot of different kind of tweaking and things you're going to want to do to your computer afterwards. If you're gaming, a lot of times you want to overclock certain things like your CPU or your GPU, which basically that just makes it run faster than what the factory gave you, which is perfectly legal, perfectly fine, perfectly safe if you know what you're doing, and there's a lot of forums and online places you can go that'll help you out with that as well. So that's what I did. I overclocked my CPU and my video card to help get a little better performance, and to help with that, you want to get software like what I'm running right now. These are benchmarks that are basically just sort of visual tests that sort of stress your GPU and CPU in different areas and just give you a rough idea of how many frames per second you get. You can, it's a way to sort of monitor it in an artificial environment outside of games. And typically, these things push it farther than most games ever would. So if you get halfway decent performance out of this, that's like the absolute ceiling of what you have as far as performance goes. And most games will run a little below that because most games don't push things as far as something like this goes. So benchmarking software, you can look into that. Prime 95 is a popular CPU. They call it a burn-in program, which basically just stretches the CPU as much as possible and produces heat. Make sure your thermal compound and your CPU cooler is working fine, everything like that. But it also, makes it test its stability. Whether, if you do overclock, that's important to test whether the CPU is stable over a long period of stress. So that's a popular one for the CPU. For the graphics, you can use something like this, or Furmark is a popular one as well that stresses the GPU. But that really only kind of stresses, makes it heat up and everything like that. But that's not really a true stability test in some senses. So you might want to get something like MemTest CL is a program I was recently turned on to, which is pretty much Prime 95 but for your graphics card. That'll run sort of random numbers through your graphics card, and specifically the memory in your graphics card, and will test a overclock and its stability. So that's definitely some useful stuff to find. I know that's probably a lot for you guys. Some of you might not. That might be a little too much for some of you guys, but I'm telling you, with a little time, patience, and research ahead of time, a gaming PC is something that really everyone can do. It's not rocket science, really. It's kind of like Legos, just sort of putting everything in the right place, making sure all the cables are connected. So, I mean, it's a little intimidating up front, but I think that if you really do the research and take the time, you'll really enjoy it. It really pays off for sure. And I know I'm enjoying my computer, and I hope you guys think about it, and hopefully this helped. If you have any more questions, let me know. But for now, that's it, I guess. NateGreat321. Sign up.